Hello, fellow metalheads, and welcome to Metal and Rock Zone. Today I want to talk about Asinhell's debut album, Impii Hora. And that album came out on Friday, 29th of September. And it's kind of an album where I will compare it to ice cream. You know, if you had this childhood, teenage year ice creams, like you love different flavors, you could mix them all together and make one amazing ice cream with, caramel, chocolate, vanilla, pistachio, whatever, all in one. They actually would taste good. This album is a little bit like that, but with death metal. So I will talk about the background of the band a little bit, what I expected of this album, what it actually turned out to be, and I will highlight some of the tracks that I like the most. And I will give my verdict and rating at the end. Before we start, our social media, that's at Metal and Rock Zone. You can find us on TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, where we share shorter videos, album anniversaries, and different kind of stuff that you don't see here on the channel. So follow us on some of these at Metal and Rock Zone. And our weekly playlist that came out on Friday. We do every week a playlist of any new release that comes out that week. Last week's playlist, 100 and something songs. With 52 bands, so we do 2 songs per band, and that's you can find in the first comment below this video, and that's on Spotify. I also already did a review on another album that came out on Friday. That's KK's Priest, The Sinner Rides Again. You can check that out here. Now, this band, Asinhell, this is a kind of a Danish-German band, and if we start just with the cover of this album, Impii Hora, it's kind of like some, I don't know, black creature, or it could even be an ocean or something. What I like about it is you can actually read the name of the band and the name of the album, which is not always the case with death metal and black metal. But pretty basic, cool, black and white. The meaning of the title is Impii Hora means like ungodly hour, and it's Latin, I assume. I'm pretty sure, I didn't check that out, but yeah, it must be. The album is 10 tracks, but 9 kind of in reality, because there is one song that is 0.09 minutes, so 9 seconds basically, at the end, that's called Føj for helvede, which means damn it in Danish. And the background of the band, guys, and here's where it kind of gets interesting. I found the single of this is how I discovered it. I found the single of this band that came out, The Fall of the Loyal Warrior, I don't know, some weeks ago, and I was like immediately like, what the fuck is this? So I wanted to know more. And I looked up the band, and it turns out it's Michael Poulsen, who's the frontman of Volbeat. And I knew before that he had a background in death metal. He had a band called Dominus in Denmark. They made, I think, like 4 full albums from 94 to 2000. And ironically, they kind of started as a death metal, but they ended up kind of a groove metal. But ironically, the second last album of Dominus was called Volbeat, or Wall.beat, and that ended up being his band, Volbeat, and the rest is kind of history. Volbeat, interesting, we were in Denmark, of all places, last year, me and my girlfriend, and she came with me. I dragged her into an album store, she held Volbeat, we bought the album, and she loved the band. So she dragged me into a concert of Volbeat here in Prague, and I was surprised, because I kind of thought that this kind of punk rock, rockabilly stuff that they play wouldn't be my thing, but they are super, super cool live, and it's a really good band, like they know their shit. So it's one of those kind of surprising things. You can check out that concert review actually here, when I took one for the team, and was not disappointed. Now, the other members of this band is a German guy called Marc Grewe, and he was in a band called Morgoth, and is in a band called Insidious Disease, I think it's called, like something like that. And I don't know very much about this guy, I'll be perfectly honest about that. I mean, I'd heard about Morgoth and heard some of their stuff, but not like some band that I had followed a lot. And then a guy called Morten Toft Hansen, he was in a band called Hatesphere. This is a Danish metal band that's been around for ages, and I think he was on their first album between 2000 and 2003 or something like that. And then he's been in a Danish band called Raunchy, which is like an old school band going all the way back to the 90s. Yeah, apparently, from what I understand, there were some riffs lying around from Volbeat or from Michael Poulsen that didn't fit into Volbeat, so they decided, okay, let's make an album. And obviously, they have been very kind of open about it, that this is influenced by their childhood. This is their ice cream, the multi-flavored ice cream that I mentioned. So, what I expected hearing those influences was, Entombed, Bolt Thrower, At the Gates, Death, and all these bands, and I kind of thought this would be like just a copy of that somehow. But on the other hand, I was sure that you know, Michael Poulsen would bring something in, some added flavor or something that wouldn't be kind of straight out of the playbook. And what it actually turned out to be is it's indeed, you know, kind of tribute to those bands that have influenced these guys, and maybe specifically him. I think he's kind of the primary songwriter. And there are elements of where you kind of straight out can hear the elements of these bands. Like there is I think song number 2, Inner Sancticide, that's really kind of like a tribute to death. Think leprosy, spiritual healing period. And that's both in kind of in terms of songwriting and also kind of just the sound, both vocally and guitar and all that stuff. And then there are strong kind of references to kind of Entombed, death and roll stuff. There's even a little bit of Sepultura vibes that I hear here and there. So it's good stuff. And the guitar sound kind of goes from being this basso guitar, you know, like this, yeah, in a lot of the songs actually, and straight out thrash in like songs like Desert of the Doom, where I feel like, yeah, this is thrash metal, you know, dark thrash metal. And in between it kind of grooves like hell. So it's a very kind of mixed bags and of, you know, all these bands that you would know, but not sounding exactly like any of them somehow. So there are, you know, hints here and there. And the solos are like a box of chocolate, because you have these kind of traditional death metal solos that are almost uncomfortable, but you also have on songs like The Ultimate Sin a very melodic solo. So I like that stuff, because that kind of gives it a very different feeling sometimes when you're kind of getting a little bit depressed of the uncomfortable sounds and riffs and melodies or non-melodies, and then they bring these melodies in. And there's even somehow like this new wave of heavy metal vibe in some of the solos. The singing is a little bit cleaner than you would get used to maybe on these kind of traditional old school death metal bands, but I kind of like that. I like to be able to know and hear the lyrics. And I think actually Marc Grewe, I'm happy that I've discovered him, because he's an amazing vocalist, and I started listening yesterday to some of his older stuff, and he is 53 now, and he sounds just as good as he did in '93. The lyrics are no surprise, they are about death, but war death, cannibalism death, religious death, and serial killers and all that stuff. So that's straight from where it should be. The drumming is kind of spot on, and then yeah, that kind of makes the whole thing tight as hell. And I like that in some of the songs, and I'll come to that in my highlight songs, it's creative drumming somehow. It's great sound, good mix, and it's interesting how this sounds versus, for example, Michael Poulsen's old death metal by Dominus. You can really see how far he has come. I mean, obviously technology has also come far since then. So basically, these guys took their favorite influences and they made an album with songs that kind of are influenced by these favorite bands. And I saw some criticism about that, which I don't really buy into, because if you read anyone's biography, or if you read an interview or see an interview about the band, or what influenced you, blah, 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 everyone had an influence, you know. Someone was influenced by Venom, someone was influenced by Black Sabbath, someone was influenced by new wave of British heavy metal. So, you know, nothing happens out of a vacuum, and so I don't buy into that criticism. I really love that these guys actually took the time to do this, because, I mean, for Michael Poulsen specifically at least, you know, he's in a massive rock and roll band that can tour the world whenever they like. So, but yeah, he loves this music more than just money, I guess. So on to the highlight tracks. The first track of the album, and that was, I think, the first single of the album as well, Fall of the Loyal Warrior. That song is just somehow so in your face, and I feel that it somehow captures almost the whole album very well, because it's a very diverse song with a lot of tempo changes, and has this kind of death chuck feeling somehow. And I don't know, I think this is the type of a song that I would have in my rotation forever, you know, like I really like this song. This is kind of like an amazing, legendary death metal song, and it's been out for a few weeks. If I ever have to go to war, I'm gonna play this in my tank. The second song, I think it is the second song, Inner Sancticide, that's kind of starts off with a super heavy riff, and then gives away, again, these kind of death, old school death, chuck vibes here and there. And in the chorus of that song, I love how he uses the double beat there. He kind of You need to check that out. I think it's the second time that they do the chorus, that he comes in with the double beater in a really cool way, sitting somehow on the chorus and the guitar playing, but not taking anything over somehow. Island of Dead Men, that's more of an old school kind of Swedish feeling that I get when I listen to that. But then into the chorus, I get this kind of Sepultura vibes. Maybe it's mainly from the vocals, but it's really, really cool, Island of Dead Men. And the last song that I would like to mention, The Ultimate Sin. That is kind of a straight out banger somehow, but the soloing there, as I mentioned earlier, is kind of very melodic and kind of gives a very different dimension to a song that otherwise could have been very kind of straightforward. The Verdict and Sentencing. So the pros of this album is that it has amazing riffs. It grooves and it has speed. It has, tempo changes, everything. It doesn't get monotonic. I mean, because they mix the elements really nicely and you hear the references, but there is no one thing somehow that dominates. It has a great sound, all that stuff, and good mix and all that. The vocals are amazing. This, as I said, I mean, for me, this opened up a whole new avenue where I can go into Marc Grewe and listen to all of his stuff. Obviously, the guitaring and the solos are great, and I mean, the drum, as I mentioned earlier, but yeah, the guitaring and the soloing is great, and it really, there can be traces of something from the outside into the genre somehow that comes with Michael Poulsen's playing. The negatives, I can't really find a lot of negatives. I mean, in some way I can say that it's not very creative, but I don't think that was ever the plan, and I didn't expect these guys necessarily to reinvent the wheel. I think they could easily be maybe a little bit more adventurous, and hopefully they make a second album or something, but I love this album for what it is. So I am actually gonna give this album 9 out of 10. I'm pretty sure that if this album would have come out anytime between like 87 and 95, this would be on anyone's like top 5, top 10 list of death metal albums of all times. I really hope that they will tour this stuff and make another album. That would be great, because I would love to see these guys live. I think these songs are perfect for live setting. So yeah, all the bands that I've been listening to since Friday when the playlist came out, obviously KK's Priest, check out that review, Nervosa and Blackstone Cherry. Those albums that I've kind of been into as well, and they're really, really cool for different reasons. Let me know if you listen to this album by Asinhell, what you think about it. Remember the playlist in the first comment of this video. Like, share, comment, do all that usual stuff. See you guys. Bye-bye.